Yeah, good to go.
Okay, let's make a start then. Thank you, Olga. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this online event on the topic of lifestyle mobilities and digital nomadism. So this event is hosted by the University of Eastern Finland and has been organized by Olga Hannonen, who we've heard so far a little bit from this morning. She's also from the University of Eastern Finland, and myself, Scott Cohen, and I'm from the University of Surrey. So we'll come back to Olga in a moment as she'll speak directly after me as part of this short introduction. So firstly, I would like to provide some background to this event, starting with a brief historical perspective. So at the 2010 annual conference of the Royal Geographical Society, Tara Duncan, who I saw has joined the event today, and we convened 3 sessions on lifestyle mobilities, which I believe is one of the earliest attempts to bring the concept of lifestyle into conversation with the mobilities turn in the social sciences. So the array of interesting papers from those sessions back in 2010 formed the basis and inspiration for an edited book on and conceptualization of lifestyle mobilities, which Tara and I worked on with Maria Thulmark. In the decades since, research on lifestyle mobilities has steadily expanded. I believe this is due to the theoretical leverage a lifestyle mobilities perspective provides on the blurred intersections of travel, leisure, work, and migration. It seems to me that the most prominent societal development with resonance for lifestyle mobilities in recent years has been the rapid rise of digital nomadism. This has been facilitated by the broader digital transformation of societies, in part accelerated by the COVID-19 pandemic and changing workplace practices. We therefore decided to give focus to digital nomadism in today's event. Today's event has been motivated by 2 objectives. The first is to potentially set in motion a global academic network on lifestyle mobilities and digital nomadism. The second motivation was to generate interest in and potential initial papers for submission to a new curated collection that will be launched in the journal Annals of Tourism Research on lifestyle mobilities. Curated collections differ from special issues in that they are cultivated on an ongoing basis and seek to be the go-to place for research around a certain topic. This curated collection, which is open to submissions from today onwards, will look to publish work that uses societal perspectives and has relevance for tourism. That is, on the blurring of tourism within lifestyle mobilities. I should warn, however, that all submissions to the curated collection go through the journal's normal, rigorous review process, and that participation in today's event is no guarantee of a positive publication outcome in the curated collection. Olga and I have been delighted at the interest we've received in this event, which clearly demonstrates substantive and cross-disciplinary interest in the area of lifestyle mobilities and digital nomadism, with wide global reach. We've had over 150 registrations for the event, spanning Asia, Oceania, Europe, and the Americas. Our presenters work in diverse academic fields of interest, such as anthropology, human geography, media, migration, tourism, and workplace studies. We have a packed lineup of 10 presentations, each of which has 10 minutes to be presented, followed by 5 minutes of Q&A and discussion. Olga will be keeping us to strict timings and signaling presenters when they have 2 minutes left to speak. We've saved 15 minutes before our end time, 3 hours from now, to allow for a closing discussion. During that time, we'd like to discuss your views on what form, if any, a network on lifestyle mobilities and digital nomadism should take going forward from here. To that end, we ask that all presenters respect Olga's timing signals so that we do not erode the time of other presenters and the closing discussion. We'll not have any formal breaks during these 3 hours, so please take your own comfort breaks if and when you need them. I'll now hand over to Olga, who will spend a few minutes reflecting on recent public and media interest in digital nomadism and some major lines of academic inquiry that flow out of this interest. Directly after that, Olga will call upon our first presenter. You're muted, Olga.
Thank you, Scott. And I'm trying to share my slides now that I have. Yes, and for those who do not know me yet, I'm Olga Hannonen. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Eastern Finland, and currently I'm in Melbourne as a visiting researcher at the School of Geography, Earth and Atmospheric Sciences. So just to continue with the timeline of how the lifestyle mobilities research have been progressing, in 2020, when the world has got into the first wave of the pandemic, the very first special issue on digital nomads has been published. And the phenomenon has been growing rapidly already then. And the major focus of the research attention was on digital nomads as a new mobile subject, who they are, why and where do they travel, how do they organize their life and work on the move, and most importantly, how this growing type of mobility can be placed within existing categories of lifestyle and work-related travel, as well as different types of flexible works. So here are some examples of the categorizations that were offered by Dave Cook and by me in that very special issue in 2020. And another example of categorization offered by Nash and others that dates back to 2018. Since then, despite the pandemic and strict mobility restrictions in different parts of the world, the phenomenon and subsequent research has been growing. So today, they see the shift of scientific attention from nomads to destinations. How destinations attract and accommodate digital nomads? What are economic and social outcomes of digital nomads' presence? That include most recent media discussions on the displacement of locals through the increase in rental prices and proliferation of short-term rentals in the cities, displacement of traditional businesses, as well as gentrification. So here's just some examples of these discussions that can be found online. With the growing number of countries that launch digital nomad visa schemes, the media has been extensively covering state-specific policies and reasonings behind these decisions. And here, again, a couple of examples of media coverage. And I also commented to some of these. One of the first online events on digital nomads was my webinar last year that was organized for the general public. And I was a sole speaker back then. And today's events show that the scale and interest in the phenomena has grown. And today we have 10 presentations that will cover different aspects of digital nomadism with empirical examples coming from Southeast Asia, different parts of Europe, Central and South America, as well as the Caribbean. While the line of speakers today dominate with those who do research on digital nomadism, lifestyle mobilities are not limited to this type of mobility. So let me now call upon our first speaker, who will share her research insights on van life, one of the examples of lifestyle mobilities. So over to you, Tarja.
Thank you. Let me see. The hardest part, sharing my screen. Can you see it?
Perfect.
Yep. Okay. Right. Thank you so much for the invitation to be able to talk here. I'm super happy about that. And I'm talking to you actually from Finland at the moment. So I'm also really unfortunate to have to leave a bit before noon for another conference, where I also represent of the project there. But I work at the Arctic University of Norway as a postdoctoral research fellow, and for the 3 years still to come on this fascinating topic. And I'm really keen on becoming part of this network. So what I'm going to do today is talk a little bit about my project Internal of Van Life Landscapes, and also talk about my kind of ideas, what I would want to contribute to the creative collection in the future. Van life, let's say first, go to see my webpage and go to see ResearchGate to follow my project to learn more. I'm giving also a blog, so much things that I can't cover today. So I won't even give it a go, let's say it like that. But I have to start with the pandemic. With the COVID-19 pandemic being really far from over, so to say, new arrangements regarding our mobilities have emerged or have been strengthened. After us being deprived of the freedom of movement, we have both followed the so-called new rules of the game in the workplace, working remotely, home offices, and as a result, we have reassessed our working practices, and perhaps continue some of these practices also when the pandemic has eased up a little bit, at least at some parts of the world. At the same time, we see house price markets spiraling out of control in many cities worldwide, pushing us to think about housing, dwellings, and so-called home in alternative ways to what Western neoliberal values suggest. Thus, I argue that research focusing on leisure and tourism mobilities needs ongoing engagement with emerging trends of mobile lifestyle that fluctuate on and transcend the so-called imagined borders of tourism and mundane life. These lifestyles are affected by and take shape within the realities created by the pandemic, forming new ways of living that stick with us even after the pandemic has eventually become accepted as part of our lives. This presentation belongs to my ongoing research project of van landscape at the Arctic University of Norway. In the project, I investigate the potential and challenge of lifestyle mobilities, and within that, van life, in revisiting central concept of tourism and tourism mobilities. For example, that of destination, belonging, and placemaking. My work is guided by feminist posthumanisms, and it takes part in practical experimentation, how to collectively craft knowledge and new imaginaries of tourism. This work acknowledges the complex material assemblages that become part of mobile lifestyle and so-called road trip cultures. These assemblages consist of roads, bridges, mobile homes, other types of vehicles, oceans, mountains, non-human animals, humans, and the list could go on. In these assemblages, the home on wheels plays an important role. Around 3 years ago, I started to become curious towards a really growingly popular nomadic lifestyle and community called van life. My YouTube and Instagram feed was filling with stories of van lifers who chose to live and travel differently. In their small mobile homes, van lives could prepare food, sleep, spend leisure time, possibly work and socialize. Many times the van work as an affordance to be in immediate presence of nature. Long-term van lifers arrange their work-life practices to support this mobile lifestyle. This means that they either work seasonally to enable traveling and living in their van, work from their van through traveling, or work more conventionally in a physical workplace daily while staying at home in their car. Short-time van lifers own it or rented vans for the means of travel and part-time living. For many, to rent a van appeared to be a kind of a step towards getting a one of one's own. Evidence shows the rising popularity of renting caravans and converting vans during the pandemic lockdowns worldwide. In the US, the demand for convertible vans has gone up substantially during the pandemic. And in Norway, the RV industry experienced a heightened demand of vehicles, both rental and purchase, during the first lockdowns in spring 2020. According to the European Caravan Federation, the European motor caravan segment continued its growth in 2020 by 20%. With almost 160,000 new registrations, the new year 2020 was yet another record year, representing a doubling of total amount of registration of RVs in 2010. These numbers are important to be considered practically. Where are all these motor caravans driving, stopping, and camping? The registration of new RVs and with that the growing popularity of van life is connected closer to tourism trends that were picked up during the COVID pandemic. BBC reports how, quote, the coronavirus pandemic has overfueled Britain's already burgeoning appetite for slower, more immersive travel. A 2019 survey by Hidden Scotland found that 83% of people prefer slow travel to tick-box tourism, while global data concluded in May 21 that the increased hassle of international travel, growing population of remote workers, meant that longer trips, which foster a connection with local people, culture, food, and music, are set to become the norm. As such, van life does have a potential to encourage a more meaningful and slow forms of travel, which also might mean longer stays in places and regions, and possibility to connect with local everyday life. But the picture is a bit more complex. Van life is entangled with questions of land politics, citizen politics, sustainability of automobilities in the future, over-tourism, human-nature relationship, and much more. Freedom, in the case of full-time van lifers, especially from societal norms, such as widely accepted expectations of housing and property, was strongly communicated in those stories I followed in my social media feed, and the discussions I have since then had with van lifers taking part in my work. Slowness was also a crucial part of the way of traveling and living van life. There was generally no rush to reach a destination, and van lifers could stay in one spot or area for lengthened periods of time. However, especially because of the social media with its performance culture that encourages comparison and competition, especially new and unexperienced van lifers can try to travel a lot in short periods of time and also communicate about it in social media. Especially long-term van lifers had a connection to digital nomadism. Different technological advancements have changed a large portion of work life to nomadic and place independent, allowing space for mobilities that blur the boundaries of work, leisure, living, and traveling. As such, long-term van life departs from conventional caravanning, RVing, and trailer parking. These lifestyles exist in stationary caravans, for example, the means of leisure, also including pensioner caravanners that are also referred to as grey nomads. Traveling with a towable caravan is also materially different from driving a converted van that is compact in size. They have different limits in relation to where they can be driven and parked, and on what kind of roads. Yet in the van life trend, one can also find some outstandingly large and heavy vehicles, such as old school buses and army trucks. Ooh, I do my best, Olga. Materially, camper vans are minimalist homes that do not fit much. To move to a camper van can be a liberating experience involving declutter. Yet it doesn't mean that the price tag of the mobile lifestyle is low. Converted vans are projects that can cost considerable amounts of money, not to mention the maintenance, heating, and fuel cost of the van. These are everyday living costs for the van being used as a home vehicle that is only temporarily stationary and that fulfills the basic requirements of housing. However versatile, van life happens at the interface of many common notions we have learned to put against one another. Van life blurs the boundaries of home and away, travel and a local, destination and journey. In the case of people financing and making possible the practicing of the mobile lifestyle by communicating about their lives in the vans to others, social media influencers, vloggers, YouTubers, bloggers, the lines between leisure, work, home, away become even blurrier. I'm going to skip to my conclusion. I think I don't have time for 2 other points to conclude. Regardless and precisely because of this complexity I've been talking about, the digital nomad van lifers exist in a complex more than human network of actors and are, as I will argue in more detail in the upcoming paper, a heterogeneous group of travelers that ought to be taken seriously in envisioning and investigating post-pandemic mobilities travel tourism. So in the paper that I propose, I will work towards a theorization of van life as a fusion of mobile vacation, recreation, lifestyle, and counterculture. As in the title, Van That Escaped the Discipline, I pointed the need of adapting a strongly cross-disciplinary approach to understand van life in tourism and leisure context and lifestyle mobilities as a theoretical concept support this aim. Even when being theoretically oriented, the upcoming paper will engage with my ongoing work with van life practitioners, tourism and destination management actors, local communities, landscapes, roads, bridges, islands, sheep and highland cows along infamous tourist routes in the Scottish Highlands and northern Norway, coastal region of Helgeland. Thank you for your time and attention. I'm looking forward to hear your comments.
Thank you, Tarja. Thank you for keeping the time and fantastic kickoff of the seminar today because it provides a very interesting connection to the topic of digital nomadism that we have dominating today in the seminar. So if there are any questions or comments to Tarja, we have a couple of minutes. You're also welcome to post your questions in the chat. So if there is no time to address them during these several minutes, our presenters can then communicate back during the event. So you are welcome either to speak up or write down your questions.
Meanwhile, we wait. I also really encourage you just to look up my email and just write to me. I'll be more than happy to chat also after this wonderful seminar.
I think Dave just messaged to me, but it meant to be a question to Tarja. What region are you collecting your data? I think Tarja just briefly mentioned it, but could you repeat?
Yeah. I'm a bit against the kind of concept of gathering data. I feel like I'm trying to live van life as a phenomena by not owning a van of my own, but traveling with a van to quite many places. But my kind of focus in where do I do my research in is the Scottish Highlands, and there is this really infamous North Coast 500 route, which is really popular also amongst the van life community, but which also holds a lot of challenges of over-tourism. And in there, I find that the van life, kind of the romanticized van life phenomena, mixes and clashes with the discourse and practicalities and realities of tourism. So that's one place I'm doing my research in. And then as part of the wider project that my project locates in is about post-pandemic travel here at the UiT, University of Norway. We are doing then research in the Helgeland area of northern Norway with tens of thousands of small islands. And there are 3 infamous routes that go to the highlands, to Helgeland, and also form connections to the ferries and speedboats that take people to the small islands. So that's going to be my other kind of focus empirically.
Thank you for this deep comment. And then we have another question from Tara Duncan, who asking, do you see or think there are intersections between ideas of serious leisure and van life?
Could you say the
intersections between ideas of serious leisure and van life?
Serious leisure?
Yeah. Are you familiar with the concept? Yeah.
I think I have to write that down. But okay. I think if by in a way serious leisure, if I just kind of interpret it right, we would be also thinking about the kind of interconnection between work and fun, right? So I would say spontaneously, definitely I see some strong connections, but I have to look into, maybe you could write in the chat if that concept is something that is actually established somewhere.
Yes, it is in tourism research, like hunting tourism, for example, or fishing tourism are considered some like serious leisure, that it's a serious hobby and something that, that is the example. So and just as we have one more minute, I want to ask you, who are the van travelers in your research? Are these local Norwegian or in Scotland? Who are those? Do you see this international group of people doing this lifestyle, or?
Good question. My hope is to both reach to people who are actually traveling in Norway, coming from, for example, so far from Netherlands and UK. And basically what I try to do is I use the snowball effect. So when I see one van lifer that I connect, for example, in Tromsø, it led to another, And that's why there's no kind of scope for me from where they should come to travel to Scandinavia, but usually they are from UK. They might come even from the US, but usually from UK, and they take their own van and travel all the way to North Cape and then travel down to Southern Europe, for example. But then as part of my kind of fieldwork, so to say, I'm also taking part in van life festivals, where I meet a really versatile group of people who are also living in their vans and maybe not traveling for months of time at the moment. So, but then also when I do research in Scottish Highlands, for example, there are people from basically all around the world. So this is basically my scope.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. We have one more question. If you can look it up in the chat and answer directly there, because we have to move on with the program, and I call upon our next speaker, Jose Ignacio. If you could start sharing your screen and present. The presentation will be on imagining the nomadic destination through place branding narratives, communicating identity through destination. Yeah, please. We do not hear you, Jose Ignacio, if you're.
No.
Okay.
You can hear me, no?
Yes, now.
Okay,
Perfect. Please.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. We are Ignacio Sanchez and Marko Orel from the Center for Workplace Research of the Prague University of Economics and Business. And we are going to present our research titled Imagining the Nomadic Destination Through Place Branding Narratives, Communicating Identity Through Destination. First of all, in this research, we try to analyze the visual representation of destinations from digital nomads. A lot of campaigns are designed to produce images and storytellings about nomadic life. These aesthetics reinforce important narratives, not just around the remote worker, but also the destination and the lifestyle. In this sense, meanings are shared as a part of the visual communication and the brand strategies of the place. In this section, we discuss about the theoretical framework. Place branding notions are very important for us. That means working with a specific focus, the destination brand, mostly used in touristic marketing and communication field. We see digital nomads as a new consumer in places who is an emotional and hedonistic co-producer and co-creator of the brand. Internet and digital technologies facilitate his or her relationship with a nomad destination, an environment where he or she can be part of the community. This process starts in the first contact with the content of the promotional campaigns. We affirm that visual representation of the place tries to persuade in first instance the digital nomad senses. It is like the initial step to consume the experience. Our methodology is qualitative. It fits with the understanding of place brand narratives, more specifically with visual documents available at official websites. These documents are seen from a content analysis approach, and our sample is made up of some of the following cases: Argentina, Mauritius, Dominica, Antigua, Barbuda, Barbados, Seychelles, Cayman Island, etc. We code our visual documents and we try to identify a system of signs. We try to explore meanings through the strategic communication of nomadic destinations and their campaigns, the promotional campaigns promoted by institutional actors like government or tourism offices. In most cases, presenting the destination as a safe place is a constant narrative that means warranty and protection for the other, that it's especially after COVID. The place represents a safe alternative to be fine, not just as a touristic and workplace, but an environment where nothing bad can happen. This idea is constantly repeated in the different places. The use of powerful slogans and taglines reinforce the visual representation. The recurring natural resource is shown in most of the campaigns. Exploiting the site's own potential with professional photographs is part of the communication tactic. To establish trust, numerous images and short phrases are displayed by the institutional actor, usually governments and tourism offices, like we can see in this case in Dominica. As we can see, remote workers or people who represent them are a commonplace in all the campaigns. This strengthens the visual conventions and show the actor into the scene. captivating images of enjoyment and fun are emotion driving, like we can see in this case. Cases such as Seychelles campaigns, which uses the concept of workation, emphasize vacation and leisure as the main offer. In this case, showing the nomadic family, something that it's different from most of the campaigns where single people or couples are usually observed. For example, in this case, one of the messages expressed is that the nomadic life, the nomadic destination, is for a broad audience. The image is a testimony of an inspired life, and it illustrates the discourse. A remarkable finding is that photography is the most used resource to represent visual culture of digital nomads in marketing and communication strategies. On the other hand, touristic images prevail over working image. Also, idyllic landscapes and conventional language are part of the destination promotion. It should be noted that advertising and promotional messages constantly reaffirm that feeling at home will be part of the site's offer. This environment provides what is needed to make it happen. The new home is part of what it's promised. Beyond advertising and promotion, the one that communicates and in a certain way accompanies is the destination itself, or rather, the destination brand. Obviously, this is part of the communication strategy using public relations and experiential marketing to build the discourse. Finally, place brand narratives for digital nomads use similar aesthetics insights of touristic communication that can be understood by a wider audience. Nomads destination strategies are framed into a lifestyle design, and they are visually reinforced by the emotional images related with freedom, novelty, sunny places, and the constant idea of joy. Also, destinations are managed as a marketing tool to attract remote workers, showing the best version of what implies to live there. Their advantage, and above all, by highlighting the physical place as a main asset to discover. These are our reference, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Perfect. You got some extra minutes for questions and comments, if there are any. And yeah, thank you for providing this interesting and intriguing representation, or like selling the lifestyle, I would say, analysis. Yeah, actually, I have a question. When you were showing the slides, and you have images about safe destination, was it Mauritius or some other? I couldn't, help to think about this Holbrook's theory of consumer values, and then of course you had the hedonic and emotional, like everything is kind of there, and then there is those seasonal or contextual value that. Do you think this safe destination is just, just a short period of time, that it's kind of, I mean, we are getting out of the pandemic. So is it just something that will not be there maybe in a half a year or even sooner? And what will be there instead of, being COVID safe?
The idea of a safe place is promoted all the time, no? Especially because a lot of people are going to that places to stay isolated of the topic about COVID. So in this moment, if you see, for example, the different campaigns in this moment, they are continue promoting this idea. So it's something that they usually do.
I see. Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? You can unmute yourself and ask. And we have a wonderful discussion going on in chat, which is very nice. Okay, Dave Cook is asking, is there more a focus on the institutions, nation states that promote visas than on material produced by nomads? When you...
Yes. No, sorry, Olga.
Yes,
What?
please. Did you get the question? Is the focus more on institutions and nation states that promote visas, or rather on the material produced by nomads on the web pages that you analyzed?
Okay, thank you. Yes, in this case, we have a place brand, an official place brand, no, in some cases, and this official place brand is next. It's the same brand of from the digital nomad. So it's one of the advantage and the offers, and one of the things that offer that places is an ideal place to digital nomads. So digital nomadism is used like a positive attribute of that kind of places. But all the time, the main actor that communicates everything is the official actor, is normally the government. So that's the reason, because we said that the public relations approach and focus is very important to that kind of campaigns.
All right, thank you. And there is another big question coming. How are the destination branding initiatives dealing with negative responses by local communities to these digital nomads? For example, in Portugal, there has been a growing movement connected to rising unaffordable rents, which are seen as a direct result of the country's digital nomad scheme that attracts digital nomads to these places. So the question is, how are the destination branding initiatives dealing with negative responses by local communities to these digital nomads?
In this case, the tactic of communication, that is the publicity, is constantly used by the government actor linked to the media. So all the mass media communications are very important in this case, and they try to equilibrate the negative perception throughout the different publicities. That it's something that is highly used. Usually they don't show in the promotional campaigns the negative part. They emphasize the positive attributes, and they try to deal with the negatives through publicity techniques. It's a tool highly used in political communication too.
I see. Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? We have time for one more question, if there is any. Right, I do not hear anyone or see any messages, but if there are any questions or comments, please you're welcome to post them in chat, and our speakers will then comment on them during the event. So we are moving further to the next presentation by David Cook and myself. So which very well connects with our current speaker or previous speaker. Lots of visual materials that were shown very much connected to what we will be doing in our paper. And this is very much work in progress. So these are some preliminary ideas, and we hope to get some comments and advices on this. So please, let's start, David. Okay, we do not hear you, David.
I think I'm unmuted now.
Yes.
Thank
please.
you. Yeah, this is super exciting to see all of these faces. Some people that I've kind of haven't spoken to, but I've seen. So just to introduce myself, good morning or good afternoon, depending where you are. My name is Dave Cook. I'm an anthropologist conducting research at University College London. My interest is digital nomadism, which I've been continuously researching since 2015. And most of my published research is ethnographic and explores the daily lives of digital nomads. And one of my papers looked at how digital nomads managed work-life balance from Thailand. And the second looked at how digital nomads express their borderless identities through their tax and visa arrangements, and also by the types of businesses that they set up. So one of the things I looked at was a practice called drop shipping. Pass over to Olga.
And I'm Olga Hannonen. As you heard already, I'm a human geographer and a tourism geographer, and my research interests focus on different types of tourism and lifestyle mobilities. And in my earlier research, I did study second home tourism and residential mobilities. And currently, I'm looking into digital nomadic mobilities with a specific focus on mobility regimes, borders, and the use of mobility infrastructures.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the digital nomad paradox. And the paradox is that digital nomads reject the label tourist, but they often go to sites of tourism. And on my very first day of research in a co-working space in 2015, I was chatting to a nomad and I asked him where he was from. And the question really irritated him, and he told me that's such a dumb touristy question. And these kind of encounters and insights kept on arising. So just to give another interesting encounter, I observed in Chiang Mai in a coffee shop in 2018, there were 10 people working on laptops, and the manager asked one of them to move into a smaller space so another customer could squeeze in and have a coffee. And then the laptop guy went into a long explanation about how he wasn't a tourist. And it was quite interesting to observe. And I later went and spoke to the Thai manager and I asked him about the exchange, and he just shrugged and told me they're Farang, which means foreigner in Thai. And over the years, Thai locals I haven't seen them make much of a distinction between digital nomads and tourists unless they're working in a co-working space. And when I first gave a talk about my research at Chiang Mai University, which is right next door to the main digital nomad area, which is called Niemen, many of them were completely aware that Chiang Mai was a digital nomad hotspot. So it was very interesting that these nomads were invisible to many local Thais. Adapt the tourist gaze as a framework to help us understand how these places and spaces are adapting to a phenomenon that's expanding and maturing. And we're going to look at that from the point of view of Chiang Mai. And Olga's now just going to talk about the tourist gaze as a theoretical framework.
Right. Though digital nomads try to distance themselves from tourists, they visit tourist destinations, they travel on tourist visas, they use tourism infrastructures, and their motivations are often touristic. However, they stay longer in the destinations than ordinary tourists. So in this regard, they engage with destinations in a different manner than holidaymakers, as noted by digital nomads themselves. Thus, we argue that their experiences at and perceptions of destination, their gaze, constitutes a separate conceptual and empirical category. The tourist gaze is defined as the way tourists experience and perceive destinations when they engage in travel. Tourist gaze also involves daydreaming and anticipation of new experiences that are constructed through encounters with various media content, for example, as was shown during the previous presentation. It also involves an array of tourism professionals who reconstruct and reproduce the gaze through activities in various encounters with the destinations on site. And tourist gaze is constructed through clear separation of tourism from the everyday. And as you can see on the slide, these are dichotomies: work versus leisure, ordinary experiences versus extraordinary, as well as home and away. And digital nomads challenge these dichotomies through blending work and leisure, home and away. And based on this and other issues that arise in relation to digital nomad mobilities, we ask the following question: how digital nomad gaze is constructed? First, the places are gazed upon for the purposes that are not directly connected with paid work, or normally offer some contrast to work. This conflicts with digital nomads' nature of travel, as their gaze includes work-related spaces and practices. So we ask, how does work affect the tourist gaze? Second, the development of the gaze has shifted from professional experts to digital nomads. They are not just visitors to the destinations, they are also managers and promoters of destinations through personal media channels. So our second question is, what actors are involved in the production of the gaze? And third, it's claimed that there is a gap in the way digital nomads' lifestyle is imagined or gazed, speaking in Ari's terms, and how they occupy very real spaces in their travel destinations. So here just a couple of teasers for you to see the contrast. When you Google Chiang Mai, visit Chiang Mai as a tourist, and Google Chiang Mai as a digital nomad, so you see very different images and very different visual content. As a tourist, you would see nice landscape and scenic images, scenic landscapes. And as a digital nomad, you would probably get an image of a person with a laptop in a scenic location or in a co-working space. And the picture that we have here in the bottom with a person while working, he's overlooking bathing elephants. So it's not a realistic image, but it shows how work is placed into a scenic landscape. It shows the way this lifestyle is portrayed and promoted.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm just going to talk a little bit, very briefly, about research methods. Just think Olga theory and me qualitative data on this project, at least. So I have data sources from more than 50 interviews pre-pandemic. And I've just arrived back in the field. I'm in Bangkok today, and I'm on my way back to Chiang Mai to capture more up-to-date data in this new pandemic context. You know, just to give you another example, some of the co-working spaces completely pivoted towards servicing local Thai students and business people during the pandemic. So that's changed back now. So it's going to be interesting to see if that has had any impacts. One data collection method will be to look at nomads' social media and blog posts to try and understand three things. First of all, how they produce the digital nomad gaze when they're in the destination themselves, and also to have discussions with nomads about the imagery and material that entice them to the location. So that links a little bit to the previous presentation, and to compare online materials that promote tourism and nomadism. And just to give you an example, one of the most useful tools that I've used is this axis, which I presented to people as a blank axis. And I created this in 2016, and I used it as an elicitation device or a talking point. So we've got two axes here. So the horizontal axis maps the level of mobility. So we've got high mobility on the right and settled on the left, if you like. The vertical axis is work focus. So we have work focus at the top and non-work or leisure focus at the bottom. And I just kind of like use this as a narrative device, and people could interpret it as they wanted to. And I mainly used this with nomads that I met in co-working spaces, co-living spaces, meetups and conferences. And also conversations with expats and tourists to see where they were plotting themselves as well. And this is a rough pattern that emerged. You know, we have tourists down at the bottom and nomads somewhere in the top left, or although a lot of nomads contest where they are on the work-leisure boundary, since I've kind of like shown this post-pandemic. So we may adapt this for collecting research for this paper if it's accepted for further development. So over to Olga.
This brings us to our final slide, and building upon the characteristics of tourist gaze, and we use the empirical data from Chiang Mai to construct the digital nomad gaze. And we use attributes of comparison that include, but are not limited to, perception of places that include anticipation and daydreaming, impression management, meaning what tourists share online, what type of content is shared online, as well as different encounters with media and different types of media, including TV, print, film, social media, and artists. Destination marketing, the actors that are involved in the marketing of the destination, tourism professionals, DMOs, influencers, somebody else, as well as what kind of infrastructure and built environment is used and how. And the list of attributes is evolving as the new data is being collected. Right now, David is now in the field. And here are also some, again, visual teasers for you to see the contrast between tourist gaze, let's say, and digital nomad gaze, the way the destinations are portrayed and imagined. And this is very much connects us with the previous presentation. So thank you very much. And if there are any questions or comments, we are very much looking forward to hear them. Okay, Scott, please.
Thanks, Olga and Dave, for that interesting presentation. I was interested, Dave, when you were talking about the way that digital nomads are perceived by local residents and the lack of distinction between digital nomads and tourists accepted in co-working spaces. So I wondered, in connecting this to the work that's been done on the gaze, you've talked here mainly about tourist gaze and digital nomad gaze, but there has been work in the past on the idea of intra-tourist gaze and reverse gaze. And I wondered here whether, in terms of the reverse gaze, you might be able to add some complexity, particularly in those co-working spaces where there's perhaps some blurring there in terms of the reverse gaze between tourists and local. Had you kind of thought about that in terms of co-working spaces at all?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by the reverse gaze, but I mean, just to kind of like think about Chiang Mai and other places where I've done research in Southeast Asia, such as Bali, people talk about, nomads talk about wanting to integrate with local communities, but you know, they don't treat Thai locals or people working in co-working spaces in the same way that they treat other nomads. So there are, you know, quite interesting processes going on there. I mean, and I think that we need to look at individual places in terms of you know, what the impacts are on local populations. I think the numbers are still quite small in Chiang Mai. I have been asked Portugal and Lisbon isn't my research site, but I often, you know, recently I've been asked by the media quite a lot of questions about what the impacts are going to be. Lisbon is already suffering from over-tourism. So, you know, I think, and then, you know, we have this category of remote worker as well. So it's quite, you know, it's quite difficult to identify, you know, what the impacts are in terms of digital nomads. But I do know that from Lisbon, and somebody said in the comments that local people are organizing themselves. It's become a politicized issue. That's not the case to, you know, to my knowledge at the moment in Chiang Mai, but when I go up there, I'm working as a visiting fellow, and I'm teaching some courses on nomadism to undergraduates, graduates, PhD students. So it's going to be really fascinating to get their point of view, because in 2020, when I was there, I would say about 80% of the people there weren't aware that this phenomenon was happening on their doorstep. So I don't know if that answers your question in terms of the reverse
I
case.
can comment a little bit
Yeah.
more on that, and we have 2 more questions. So we haven't yet looked into reverse case in detail, but Scott, thank you for bringing this to our attention. So that would be helpful indeed to look at and integrate into our initial ideas that we have at the moment. So then I will, Tarja and then Fabiola, please, your questions.
I think, Fabiola, do you want to go first? I think you were first.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Thank you, Olga and Dave, for this fascinating presentation. Are you going to gather data also on the transformation of places in relation to the working needs? Because I think there was also some records of this in one of Paul Green's article, how digital nomads are transforming tourist destination into productive and working spaces. In the shaping of this of the digital nomad case, do you think also to collect data on the transformation, for example, the increase of co-working spaces or of other kind of more professional spaces? Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great question, and the simple answer is absolutely. I mean, that's the main reason why I'm going back into the field. So, I mean, digital and Chiang Mai has been, if you look at Nomad list, it's sometimes #1, sometimes Lisbon's #1, but it's kind of like being a main digital nomad destination, you know, since about 2015. In the popular media, there are a lot of co-working spaces in Chiang Mai. A couple closed down, more ones have opened. So one of the co-working spaces that I'm going to go and look at is a specialist cryptocurrency co-working space. So that's arisen post-pandemic. Well, it's one that's been adapted for that use because of Thailand's new decriminalization or legalization of cannabis in many forms. There are now cannabis co-working spaces as well. So Marco's research on, you know, individualized co-working spaces and co-working spaces where people collaborate. My experience in Chiang Mai was that before the pandemic, most of them were individualized co-working spaces. And I think that things are changing very rapidly now. I mean, I think it's testament to the amount of people that have come onto this today that, you know, what digital nomadism meant before the pandemic and what it means now. Well, I just think it's moving quite quickly. But in terms of impacts on the built environment, I mean, we're hearing complaints about what's happening in Lisbon, and I'm really, really curious to see what's happening in Chiang Mai.
All right, and we have questions from Tarja and a couple of comments in the chat, but we take the question and then we comment on the questions in the chat after the presentation. So please, Tarja, your question.
Yes, I'm going to be super quick, and it's basically a comment, but I'm just really fascinated about the way in which you are using the kind of visual identification of who is a digital nomad, who is a tourist. And I think that relates a lot also to what I do when I follow the social media feeds of van lifers. You know, how do van lifers produce the lifestyle through social media communication, where the pictures and photos and videos and all kind of van tours kind of play a huge role. So I'm just saying to kind of give a big thumbs up for that approach, and maybe also to think about some sort of collaboration in the future.
Yeah, I just want to say a quick thing. I just want to say one quick thing about the graphic, which is always evolving, by the way. The reason why I developed that, the first digital nomad conference I went to in 2016, everybody was self-identifying as a digital nomad. And when people heard that I was a social scientist coming to look at this, they all turned around to me and said, but what is one really? And I was really confused about what a digital nomad was for the first 2 years of my research. I'm really glad that it was longer than that. And that's why I develop the tool because I just needed some kind of anchor to help me with, you know, what the self-identification meant. So that's the story behind that anyway.
Yeah. And yeah, we will answer other questions in the chat, but we have to move to our next speaker, who is Karen Wilkes, also a colleague of David from the University College London, and she would talk about digital nomads in the Caribbean context. And at this point, I would like to say that all the speakers who should speak today are present, so we will have all 10 presentations taking place. So Karen, if you can share your screen and
hopefully you can see my slides
yeah.
now. Yeah, good.
You can put the full screen mode to, yeah,
Cool.
That's perfect.
Good.
Thank you. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, and thanks for organising this event. It's amazing. So I'll make a start because I know I've only got 10 minutes. So so my research is on digital nomads and domestic wage labour, but specifically looking at the Caribbean region. So the long stay tourist visa, which allows digital nomads or remote workers to relocate to a foreign destination for periods of up to 6 months to 1 year, is one of the strategies that tourism dependent countries have introduced to reopen tourism following the 2020 worldwide pandemic. So in June 2020, the Barbadian government introduced a policy permitting tourists to stay on the island for up to 12 months on a welcome stamp visa. So in this short presentation, I use an interdisciplinary approach and intersection analysis combined with textual analysis to examine an online women's magazine article that promoted long-stay tourism in the region in the midst of the pandemic. So the analysis of two key subjects, the female digital nomad and the chambermaid, highlight critical questions regarding the contemporary meaning of work and the ways in which work facilitated by technological tools and knowledge are valorized, whilst gendered domestic labour continues to be devalued and rendered invisible. So I wish to examine the power relations that support the structures of mobility and enable digital nomadism in the context of the Caribbean region. So the global structural inequalities underpinning the need for the Caribbean region to reopen its tourism sectors within the midst of the pandemic exemplifies the region's position as one of the most tourism reliant regions in the world, and the extent to which it is dependent on the industry to generate foreign exchange and provide a large proportion of the region's income. So by placing the digital nomad alongside the chambermaid brings into sharp focus the interdependent relationship between the visitor and their host. This reliance on the host for providing comfort and leisure appears in repetitive images in which white subjects are offered pampering and luxury service. It is a recurrent theme of access to comfort that raises questions regarding the continuation of existing tourism models and their representation in global tourism media discourse. So taking the example of the online article in Marie Claire magazine entitled "I Indulged in the Business on the Beach Trend in Antigua and Will Never Look Back," which was published in June 2021. I employ an intersectional lens to consider the way in which white femininity is positioned to indulge in travel to the Caribbean during a pandemic. So a mark of whiteness is its ability to move wherever it chooses unhindered. So the lockdowns have been an affront to this privilege. So when the author of the Marie Claire article rejoices that the sun is shining, the pandemic is no longer confining us to our homes, and travel restrictions are finally being lifted, this needs to be examined in relation to the interlocking privileges that are afforded to subjects who are at liberty to travel under these circumstances. Such promotions accentuate and legitimize established notions of whiteness as entitled to consume leisure, beckoning the assumed privileged tourist. The author of the article makes clear that they have experienced exclusivity in the form of indulgence, which they intend to continue. I will never look back. So for the author, the pandemic has produced unforeseen opportunities for the accumulation of additional privileges. They can now frame employment based on digital mobile technologies within the realms of luxury. So in this next slide, she describes how easy it is for her to blend work with leisure. So analysis of the power relations as they are reproduced within the tourism industry enables an understanding of commonplace, taken for granted, yet recurring systems of value. in particular gendered systems that inform how we view and value different types of economic activity, can be identified by examining housekeeping. So housekeeping, which is regarded as mundane work associated with the home and with women, is characterized as being of little value culturally and economically. So here I'm drawing on Whiting and Simon's work, which they did on digital housekeeping. So due to being largely behind the scenes, this work is rendered invisible. Yet this reproductive work that frequently does not exist within legal frameworks, nor is theorized within economics, is not considered to be real work, which is one of the things that Whiting and Simon look at. So therefore, it is possible for the economic activity of domestic labour, which is frequently unseen and performed largely by women, is devalued within gendered systems. But what is valued is the outcome. So it's the clean room, a clean home, but not the process itself. So in the context of tourism, these social, cultural and economic values can be identified within the neoliberal tourism models adopted in the Caribbean, which encourage emphasis to be placed on the visible operations of the industry. So for example, waiting service, curated food, the maintenance of the landscapes, for example. Yet the fundamental and not so visible labour of the work that is carried out under the category of housekeeping, laundry, bed making, restocking and overseeing the presentation of guest rooms are regarded as extensions of women's expected domestic and caring roles within the so-called private sphere of the home. The combination of gender expectations and social and economic structures make it feasible within existing neoliberal models for the tourist industry to depress the wage labour on which it is reliant. So housekeeping is critical to the facilitation of the digital nomad lifestyle, as what seems to be part of the appeal of being a digital nomad for some of Fabiola Mancinelli's respondents is that the lifestyle that has been enabled is, and I quote, to outsource some of their daily tasks such as cooking or house chores, end quote. So this occurs in a low-income context whilst living a first world middle-class lifestyle. A practice which Mancinelli goes on to comment is described by some observers as being, and I quote, corporate offshoring, end quote. So as discussed above, this culturally and
Have we lost the speaker, or is it just me?
It's not just you.
I also have problem, yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
I can't hear.
So it's on Karen's
Yeah,
behalf.
she's gone.
Okay, something happened. Oh, that's unfortunate. Let's hope she's maybe joins again. Shall we wait for a minute, or? Well, while Karen may be coming back with her audio and video, I must comment that there is a wonderful conversation going on in chat, and people are connecting and giving advice and sharing ideas and networking. And this is fantastic. Like one of the outcomes that we were hoping for. And as Karen is coming back, hopefully, let me find her and grant her. Karen, can you hear us?
I'm not sure what part you got to there because it just decided to
Okay,
drop
Karen,
out.
you're back. Perfect. Let me find you in the list and grant you back the hosting rights so you can. So I think it's like about 30 seconds of your last words were lost. And I wasn't sure, was it just me, or it seems that
It was around the point of corporate offshoring, maybe slightly after that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Please continue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me resume. Okay, let me see. So I think that's where I was. Okay, so as I was saying, so culturally and economically, housekeeping is devalued. It's a practice that is given further sustenance within neoliberal approaches to tourism, which considers the depression of wages to be efficient. So indeed, Alfred Wong continues, and I quote, that in the neoliberal lexicon, productivity equates low wages regardless of their adequacy for living minimally, end quote. So he talks about the fact that the Caribbean governments are not really incentivized to increase the wages of low-paid workers, including domestic workers, he argues, and I quote, that national governments are thus predictably eager to suppress wage increases as a simple means to maintain and increase the attractiveness of the country as a preferred tourist destination, end quote. So this is supported by work carried out by the Sustainability Impact Assessment Report on the region, which notes that, you know, it's women who make up the majority of workers in the tourist industry in the Caribbean, both in the informal and formal sectors. In the informal sectors, it's women who provide a wide range of services to tourists, and this includes, you know, washing of clothes, childcare, the production and selling of handicrafts, and of course the domestic work that happens in the hotels. So it's women who they describe as doing the majority of what they call menial and semi-skilled domestic work. And this, you know, obviously this includes front of house, but also housekeeping. And this is really in contrast to the accounts that are presented in this article, this Marie Claire article, in which, you know, the digital nomad's work is the basis on which work can be defined. And I would argue then, to finish, that the focus on the promotion and celebration of work performed by the technologically equipped is misplaced, as this focus detracts from the gender inequalities in the region, in that despite the hailed economic successes of tourism, the economic benefits have not reached the majority of its low-paid housekeeping workers in the sector. With this focus on digital work, it assists in rendering work that is less visible as less valuable. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Okay, you were just with dropping out just in time anyway. So, and we just have one comment in chat. Please, everyone is welcome to ask questions. And Dave Cook is commenting that fascinating interaction with housekeepers, co-working space workers, and also outsourcing of virtual assistant to the global south is a big conversation. Are there any questions? Okay, Scott and then Fabiola.
Fabiola had her hand up for me.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no worries. Thank you. And thank you, Karen. I'm so sorry that you had this technological itch. Anyway, just a comment. Your research is very welcome, I think, that allow us also to interrogate a little bit the post-colonial relationships that are behind the digital nomads trend, and is a topic that, as Dave says, is there, but still there is not much research, because so far research is focusing on digital nomads, lifestyle, on the lifestyle and the destinations. But I think this freedom also stands upon new forms of exploitation or old forms of exploitation. So it's very welcome and interesting. Are you going to follow this research? Is this part of an upcoming paper? Are you going to go deeper on the subject? I would be interested in knowing how will this develop.
Oh, thank you for your question, and nice to meet you. Thank you. So this is new work for me. My work is on tourism and on the Caribbean. And specifically, my work is really on the all-inclusive. So this is really a new area for me to go into. I do intend to look at this in more detail. I am developing this into a fuller length article, because I was already doing that. So for me, I want to look at how they're talking about tourism as development, because tourism as development for the Caribbean is still considered to be the way that development is going to happen for the region. But this really does contradict with the gender inequality that is in the region. And that's one of the reasons why I'm focusing particularly on looking at gendered work and where women in the industry tend to be focused. And they tend to be focused in the like, as I say, in the low status work. And how does that then relate to people who you are welcoming into the region who are high status workers? So that's why I've put those two together, really, to look at the contradictions and how, if you're saying that you're going to really develop and bring about gender equality, how are you going to do that if you consistently have low wages for those domestic workers? How are you going to reconcile that?
Great, and
Thank
then
you.
Scott, your question, and then we have to move on with the program. You are muted, Scott. Please unmute yourself.
Karen, thanks for the presentation. Great presentation. It's a short comment that follows in the vein of Fabiola's comment. It's just great to see a focus on power and intersectionality in the context of lifestyle mobilities and digital nomadism, because it's often all too easy to forget the privilege that sort of runs through those areas.
Thank you. It's great to have lots of feedback. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we move with the program. All questions and comments can be posted in chat. And next speaker is Mattia Rinaldi, who will be talking about digital work lifestyle. So please, Mattia, the floor is yours. We do not hear you yet. Okay, you need to zoom in and unmute yourself.
Here we go. Okay, sorry for the small technical problem, and good morning from my side. Good morning from snowy Austria. What I'm going to talk about now is digital work lifestyle. Our study is about exploring the reconfiguration of work and leisure borders in a mobile world. So the context of the study, we have heard already a little bit about it. The technology is changing the nature of work, the workplace, and most of all, work practices. What is changing most of all is the relationship also between work and leisure, and the traditional divide that currently is falling apart. If we look at the graph on the right-hand side, what we can see is what digital technology is transforming, is empowering every individual with a handful of devices, different application tools and platform and communication system, basically to do anything from anywhere at any time and with anyone. And that includes very different life domains, being work, leisure, family, or others to follow. What we soon discovered in our research is that this freedom and this autonomy to work wherever and whenever doesn't apply just to digital nomads. It applies to a range of different workers that have been variously defined in literature. So at that point, we needed to come up with a new definition of what digital work really is, because literature is not giving an exact definition of it. So we defined digital work as the practice of work in which human activities are fundamentally intertwined with digital technologies and are conducted across variation of space-time and social settings. The aim of our study is basically to identify border management practices in what we call the digital work system, to examine these practices and the elements that influence how border management practices are performed, and finally to develop a practice-based ecology of digital workers. To do that, we used practice theory as a theoretical basis. Practice theory is based on the belief that practices are structured and situated bodily and mentally activity that manifest in doing and sayings. The elements of practice theories are human and material entity. Human entities are represented by the practitioner, and in our case, material entities are represented by digital technology. The imbrication between the practitioner that carries social agency and digital technology that carries social material agency then creates a practice. We also supplement practice theory with border theory. Border theory is based on the belief that life is subdivided in different domains and that borders is conscribed the life domains being, for example, work in our case, and leisure. What border theories also tell us is that there are different types of border that separates life domains, and that might be physical, temporal, psychological, and social border. The borders, however, are flexible and permeable. They enable blending between different domains, and they have different strengths and a different symmetry in how the movement from a domain to the other might happen. So by bringing together these two theories, we propose this conceptual framework in which is clearly visible that the practitioner carrying social agency and the digital technology carry material agency basically moderate how work and leisure domains blend or not. Our methodology comprehended first research phase, an explorative pilot study that have been followed by a main study. In our main study, we talked to 32 digital workers. We firstly ran a self-reported diary for seven days in a row in order to collect all the happenings, the doings that really happens in situ, where actually the practice is happening. And then we discuss all of the practices with our participant in a praxographic style of interview based on semi-structured interviews that were conducted online. The data that we collected are currently under analysis. Template analysis has been applied to answer the first two research objectives. And one, we have done that we are going to transform the qualitative data in quantitative manner in order to run an hierarchical cluster analysis to develop our practice-based typology of digital workers. So here are some preliminary findings. What we discovered is that basically practice can be divided in different elements, being situation specific, practitioner specific, and digital technology specific. Talk about the situation specific element. I just here offer the description of it. Situation-specific conditions influence how the practitioner intentions influence the doings of constructing border managing practice. An example of this are financial conditions. Work precarity encourages greater border flexibility and permeability. Practitioner scientific intentions influence the use of digital technology in the doings constituting border management practice. An example of practitioner-specific element is the wish of self-development. And here, digital technology is actively used to create stronger borders that favor self-development needs. And finally, digital technology specific elements. Digital technology carries affordances and constraints that influences the practitioner intention in the doing constituting border management practice. An example of it is the automatization affordance of technology. Automatization capabilities enable a practitioner to be focused on being present in a domain by enforcing borders. And that basically defines how borders are configured. So border management practices influences how borders are configured as a constitutive act between the practitioner intention and the digital technology affordances and constraints. So temporal borders are basically then dynamically created or dissolved to enable rapid transition between domains. And finally, border configuration influence how work-leisure blend will happen in practice. So border configuration will be actively used to create stronger or weaker borders to favor self-development needs, as an example. An example of a practice is something that we call the cocooning practice. Cocooning practice describes how various digital technologies are used to create and protect borders in shared public spaces. Olga, I saw it back here. Digital technologies used in this practice can include, for example, music players, mobile phones, laptops, earphones, headsets, and so on and so forth. And here I have an example from a transcript of a participant that I called Zagreb, in the spirit of digital nomadism, where people move around. So this participant is saying, I like to put on music, and when I put on the music, even if I forgot the push notification or something, so I connect my Bluetooth earphones with my laptop. So definitely music isolates me from other sounds and stuff, and keep things organized. So basically, by reflecting upon this practice, we can see that the situation-specific condition of it is our freelancing work in a beach cafe. The practitioner's specific intention is self-determination and stimulation. And this is basically supported by digital technology affordances that are mobility and interoperability. And if finally, the border configurations are configured as follows. Physical borders are blended between work and leisure, since the person is working in a beach cafe. The temporal borders, the same, are blended. Psychological borders, though, are being made stronger by digital technology. And the same goes for the social borders, where the person decapsulates itself from the surroundings. So that brings me to my conclusion. The conclusion is simple. The tourist sector will need to consider strategies to leverage this flexible new lifestyle arrangements in an ecosystem that is increasingly smart and dynamic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mattia, for very detailed insights on this work-leisure boundaries, and the floor is open for questions and comments. I don't see any comments. Chat, Fabiola, please.
Hi, thank you, Mattia. Thank you, everyone, for the presentation. I just have a doubt about the use of borders rather than boundaries, because as we are talking about mobility regimes, and borders are an element of friction in the digital nomads flows, maybe referring to borders, I don't know, maybe can be ambiguous or problematic. Why do you refer to borders rather than boundaries? Maybe it's just me, not just curious. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabiola, for the question. I'm not sure if I capture exactly the question that you're asking. Are you intending borders are country borders, or?
Yes.
No, that borders is not what is meant. It's not meant as a country border. It's meant as a boundaries between the work or the leisure domain. So there are two different theories that are very similar in terms of what they are picturing. Those are border theory and boundary theory. We decided to use border theory instead of boundary theory because it offers a more structured way to analyze data, in my opinion. But basically, they are saying the same, that different life domains can be separated in terms of time, place, psychological, mental processes, and also social processes. Does it answer your question now? Yeah, you're welcome.
So we have a question from Tarja.
Yes, thank you, Mattia, for a fascinating presentation. I think
Thank
I would
you.
kind of want to give a comment about how much potential I see what you showed also in your last slide when it comes to kind of rethinking of destinations. And I think this also comes to the big question of what is tourism in the future. So you are dealing with like really relevant topics there. And I would be kind of curious whether you have maybe discussed with your really great contribution to know what to take it from there. Like I could see you working with, for example, destination management and to work these things forward. So do you have any kind of passion or interest for that?
I have asked my participant to comment on their future perspective of how their work and their leisure combination will evolve in the future. I haven't, to be honest, analyzed those kind of bits of data yet, but I've asked them. And I got a lot of very interesting insights from them. Probably what is going to change, what we are seeing is that mobility will remain one of the major drivers for digital nomad and all of these things. But the time spent in a location is going to increase exponentially. So what I gather from my participants is that basically their wish is not just to travel from a place to another in 12 months, but just to stay in a location, enjoy it, explore it, become to some extent also local in it. And that will influence a lot how vacation or the vacation of the future will look like. Staying in a place, what needs to cater, how to cater those needs.
Thank you, Mattia. And I don't see any other hands raised, so we can move to our next speaker. And I remind you that questions and comments can be posted in chat. So Sean, up to you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all. I'll just share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, cool. So at a broad level, my research is interested in the diverse strategies digital nomads use to balance competing and often contradictory desires and needs. So for example, the desire to live a life of spatial freedom and the need to connect and belong somewhere, anywhere. These conflictual and oppositional ends place nomads in an existential bind, freedom and mobility at the cost of loneliness and social isolation. In this paper, I want to argue that one way nomads are resolving this conflict is by purchasing community through co-working and co-living memberships, effectively turning community into something that can be bought and sold on the market. In other words, a commodity. But first, it must be noted that I'm still currently doing my field work, and hence the paper I'm presenting today is still very much a work in progress. Nevertheless, in this presentation, I will weave together some of my thoughts, ideas, and observations into something approaching a cohesive argument. I'll begin the paper by illuminating one of digital nomadism's dark sides, namely social isolation and loneliness. I'll then talk about how many co-working and co-living spaces are attempting to address this problem by cultivating a sense of community in their spaces and charging for it, what I term the commodification of community. Finally, I'll then move on to discussing how nomads in Chiang Mai, Thailand, use these spaces at a cost to satisfy their social needs while still holding on to their spatial freedom. So in a radical break with the Western normative prescription of a settled existence, digital nomads engage in transitional transnational mobility practices through various geographical and temporal dimensions in pursuit of personal fulfillment and meaning. And yet this spatial freedom, hypermobility, and search for a better quality of life often comes at the cost of social isolation, disconnection. Indeed, there is an epidemic of loneliness in the digital nomad community that is often hidden behind the rosy veil of social media representations. But like any lifestyle, digital nomadism is a life of gain and loss, of sacrifice and negotiation. Social connection and the search for community in particular are constant struggles for many of the nomads I've interviewed here in Chiang Mai. And it is also featured as a pain point in my own decade-long experience in the space. For many nomads I've spoken to, loneliness and social isolation are the main reasons people give up the lifestyle. The search for community and connection through any means necessary is vital, therefore, not only for personal well-being, but also for the long-term viability of digital nomadism. Initial insights from the field illuminate a range of strategies nomads use to resolve the tension between freedom and belonging, some free, others at a cost. In fact, whilst many nomads drop into global networks of like-minded cosmopolitan communities and attend various social events to meet people, others are turning to the market. Predictably, as greater recognition of the lifestyle's potential for loneliness enters mainstream awareness through growing coverage in popular media and academic research, especially in the last 2 years since COVID-19, savvy entrepreneurs are flocking to the space and offering a number of services, motivated by opportunities to capitalize on this growing market by attempting to provide or at least mediate this social fix. For example, in order to attract nomads and sign them up as paying members, many co-working and co-living companies actively cultivate a sense of community within their spaces. Oftentimes, this sense of community is promoted front and center of their marketing efforts, with the promise of social connection and community, nomads are told, included in the price of membership, along with fast Wi-Fi, comfortable chairs, and good coffee, of course. However, by attempting to meet this social need at a cost, co-working and co-living spaces effectively commodify community and turn it into something that can be bought and sold for a profit on the market. Instead of criticizing this reification of community and the reduction of human sociality to an economic transaction, however, this paper is primarily descriptive, arguing that the purchasing of community through co-working and co-living memberships is a strategy some nomads use to resolve the tension between freedom and autonomy on the one hand, and the simultaneous yearning for community and belonging on the other hand. By signing up to co-working and co-living spaces, nomads can drop into communities as they move around the world, getting their social needs met while still retaining their freedom of movement. Conceptually, this paper draws from Marx's critical analysis of capitalism. In his insightful critique of the capitalist mode of production, Marx recognized capitalism's tendency to commodify the social landscape. Crucially, Marx argued that commodification extended to human relationships too, that social relations under capitalism are relations not between people, in fact, but between commodities. In the context of the digital nomad economy, I argue, the use value of community is being commodified and its exchange value incorporated into co-working and co-living memberships. This commodification of community, I argue, is both a sign of the lifestyle's growing popularization and of post-industrial capitalism's impressive ability to sniff out a market. But where there's a market, there's a need. As sites of socialization and a meeting point for other nomads, co-working and co-living spaces have become integral elements of the lifestyle for many, opening up channels for social connection, especially for those short on time. For nomads, time in a place is usually measured in months, if not weeks or days, and this spatial transience can present difficulties in finding and cultivating fulfilling social relationships. The topic of transience is worth touching upon here, at least in the context of social connection and community. Nomads draw from competing discourses that position transience simultaneously as both a beacon of hope and of despair. For some nomads, spatial transience is incompatible with fulfilling social connection, whilst for others, it creates the conditions for a kind of confessional space, free from the baggage of settled society, where intimate relations and revelations grow from the short-lived nature of the interaction. Analogous to the anonymity found in a confessional booth, The brevity of co-presence in particular places helps some nomads feel more comfortable in opening up and revealing more about themselves without enduring social repercussions. Indeed, for some digital nomads, the liminal space of travel with the spectre of impermanence forever looming in the background motivates them to invest more time and energy in these interactions. These conditions help nomads forge deep and meaningful connections with other nomads, even within a short space of time, which are then kept alive and sustained through mediated communication platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. For other nomads, limited time and a place motivates them to join co-working or co-living spaces in an act of instrumental rationality. Instead of spending time trying to meet people at events and local meetups, many nomads told me they'd rather pay for a co-working or co-living membership for the convenience of having an instant community to drop into. This community as a service or pay per community logic is a consumerist response to solving social isolation and hastening the process of connection. Julie from Ireland, for example, joined her co-living space after losing the motivation to form connections with people she'd never see again anyway. Staying in a co-living space required less effort than renting an apartment and meeting nomads in other ways, such as meetups, she said. However, by sharing the same space and seeing the same faces again and again, this socio-spatial familiarity made it more likely she'd talk to them, she told me, if out of nothing else than a felt sense of obligation. Other nomads shared the same sentiment. Another nomad, Katja from Bulgaria, joined her co-living space because it made meeting people and making friends much easier and quicker when in a new place. The time-saving function of these spaces is especially significant for these mobile people. Nomads simply don't have the luxury of time to cultivate community and find friends organically, and so turn to market-based solutions to fast-track social connections. In the startup scene, for example, the demands of work can position these spaces as the only way entrepreneurial nomads can get their social needs met. Much has been written recently on the social impacts of digital nomads on the host communities. From Bali to Mexico to Lisbon, digital nomads are seen not only as models of the future of work, but as bearers of transnational gentrification. The fetishization of freedom within the digital nomad gaze has also been rightly criticized on inequitable grounds. Hailing mostly from the global north, nomadic freedom is political freedom, a freedom born from structural privilege. Moreover, this freedom often comes at the cost of freedom for others. By moving to the exotic locales in the global south to be closer to nature and satisfy their creative or existential calls, digital nomads drive up rental prices for locals and create traffic jams in the idyllic places they valued in the first place. However, what receives relatively scant attention in both the academic literature and mainstream media is the privileged marginality of these nomads within their elected host societies, which positions them on the outer edges of these local communities. This, coupled with the inherent isolation associated with the lifestyle, amplified by language and cultural barriers, makes it incumbent on nomads to actively seek connections, whether organically or through the market. Indeed, community is fast becoming a commodity in the digital nomad economy. Social and community ties are hard to maintain when you're constantly on the move. And even though modern connectivity has eliminated barriers of geography, the feeling of loneliness seems to be an occupational hazard of the lifestyle. To get their social needs met, many digital nomads turn to co-working and co-living spaces. These spaces provide a sense of community and an opportunity for meaningful connections that aren't easily found on the road, especially for those short on time. But this community comes at a cost. Whilst the penetration of the market into community can be rightly criticized, it has become a non-ideal but necessary response to social isolation and loneliness that many nomads, it seems, are willing to pay for, literally. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you, Sean. I really like how you pinpoint the negative sides, both in relation to nomads and in relation to local communities in where they travel. And this the term purchase in the community is fascinating. And we have a question from Ekaterina. So please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes. Hi, Sean. Yeah, thank you. Very interesting presentation and a nice topic. I heard that you said that you are actually observing also your participants, right? So can you elaborate a bit more on that? And my second question would be, do you actually focus a bit also on like love side of relationship? Because when I did this research, a lot of especially female participants, they were really, I think, oversharing a bit how hard it is to be a lonely female traveler. So if you could help me to figure out that as well. Thanks.
Yeah, so cool. Yeah, good question. So I'm doing an ethnography I've been doing it in Chiang Mai, and I'll be doing it in Bali. And so I've been interviewing a lot of nomads that kind of use co-working spaces and use co-living spaces. And I've also been a nomad for 10 years myself. So I've been having these kinds of conversations for years and years and years. And what was the second part of your question?
The second part would be, do you include, or how do you include the part of relationship which has to do like with intimate relationship, love relationships, you know, like relationships.
Yeah, I think for the most part, digital nomadism is a single person's lifestyle, because it's a very, to generalize, but it's a very individualistic lifestyle. People are pursuing their own individual dreams and sense of meaning, and the odds of that lining up with another nomad's desires, dreams, and sense of meaning is quite rare. And it's nomads can be seen as quite a selfish, not selfish, but they're after it's all about them. So I think relationships are a big kind of struggle, and I think what often happens in the space is that people will, at one time, mobility and freedom will be at the top of their value hierarchy. So they'll pursue that at the cost of social relationships. At other times, it will switch, and they will say, you know what, I don't want to move around anymore. I'm really craving having these kind of long-term connections. And then you have the situation where nomads will stay in a place for a lot longer because they want to kind of cultivate these relationships. So it's a very dynamic kind of lifestyle. And even the values that nomads hold, it's a dynamic kind of reprioritization through the life course. And I think eventually people are kind of flipping from one not extreme, but one value hierarchy to the next, if that answers your question.
Okay, thank you. Tricky, but you answered. Thank you, Sean.
We have two more questions, and while we waiting for the question from Kaiso, who is also actually a digital nomad who started research. So I'm really looking forward to read more on research bias by digital nomads who research digital nomads. Where is the boundary between interpreting what others think and get away from your own experiences and perspectives? So anyway, Kaiso and then Mattia, quickly. Yeah, we need to move on.
Thanks, Olga. Hi. Yeah. Thanks, Sean. I think your research is fascinating. I can't wait for you to get a little bit more data in the world. So yeah, I've been a digital nomad myself as well for about 10 years. And this community thing has been very important to me, especially in the beginning when you start. Thing is though, like when you talk about it as a commodification, we see that the value of community seems to be going up and up. The price tag is actually getting very, very high. I wonder if you've come across, I'm sure, traveling groups such as Remote Work, Remote Year, or Hacker Paradise and stuff on your travels. And I always feel like when I'm in a nomad community and these groups come into town, everyone kind of pays attention and goes like, oh no, they're here. Because these are the people who are willing to pay $4,000 a month, in some cases, to buy a community for themselves and largely create a bubble where they never have to leave the bubble and never have to actually see any work in meeting other people. Are you planning to include maybe this type of groups in your research too, or are they kind of like, oh, if you have a way of doing this, I think it'd be fascinating in the future.
Yeah, definitely. Like if I come across these people, I definitely would like to talk to them. I've also kind of been quite critical of these companies coming into the space and trying to effectively make money off nomads, but at the same time, it's a way for some people to get their needs met, and I think it's very we can critique it and say it's not real. You should develop authentic connections that don't go through the market. but for some people, it's just a strategy that they use. And it would be great to kind of talk to some of these people that pay for these kind of services. I think a lot of nomads as well, the newbie nomads kind of want that safety, and they're kind of dipping their toes in the water, and they're not really kind of confident enough to kind of do it on their own. So they're looking for that helping hand. And then you've got obviously the market that's there to kind of take their money and kind of show them through the ropes. But yeah, it's a fascinating part of the lifestyle, I think. Thank you for your question.
Personally, I think it's about the sustainability of the lifestyle in a way. If you want to do it long term, you do need to create these communities, and this is one way of doing it. And like you say, they are in a hurry sometimes. Time is money for everyone, and therefore this is a way to bypass that time constraint on it. So it's in a way the investment into the future, perhaps, or something. But yeah, fascinating stuff, Sean. I can't wait to read more when you start publishing.
Great.
Nice to see you.
People are connecting and sharing experiences and perspectives. And Mattia, please, your question.
Mine is just a comment. I've seen that many of you are collecting data from digital nomads, and those digital nomads that work from co-working spaces, cafes, public spaces. What I came across in my research is that there are a lot of people that don't work from those places, that just rent apartments, houses, and just work from there. So that escape basically you people trying to collect data on site from co-working spaces, cafes, and so on and so forth. So there might be a potential there to see why they don't work from co-working spaces. What is it that drives them to even exotic destinations to work from there, but not taking advantage really of the digital community infrastructure and so on.
Yeah, there are a lot of nomads that don't work at cafes and co-working places. And I've spoken to a lot of those people as well. What I find interesting about the people that do choose to work at co-working and co-living spaces is that they're signing up for these spaces for two reasons. First of all, it's a place to get their work done, but a lot of people also use them for the opportunity to meet people. And then co-working owners and co-living companies are conscious of this, and they're trying to cultivate community, because nomads are looking to make connections. Part of the reason why they join these co-living and co-working spaces is to make these connections. So you have this situation where a space has a dual function. It's a place of work and it's a meeting point for socialization. But yeah, some people also just kind of work from Airbnbs and from their own homes, and that's fine. And they may get their social fix by meeting other nomads at meetups or events or stuff like that. So yeah, that's true. Good insight.
Thank you, Sean. Very interesting. And please continue in chat, share ideas, perspectives. We have to move on with the program, and now we are moving to the policy responses to digital nomadism. And Jan will be talking about that. What are the policy responses in his research?
Yes, thank you very much, Olga. Can you see the slides?
Yes, please.
Okay, perfect. So hello, everyone. My name is Jan. I'm a junior research fellow and a PhD candidate at the University of Tartu. And I have also been a digital nomad myself for about 5 years. So I think we're seeing some pattern here. Yes, so my research focuses on the policy responses to digital nomadism, and specifically on digital nomad visas that started emerging in the last years and months. Sorry. So let me start with a question why we should study digital nomad visas. So we all know that more and more countries are introducing these schemes, these programs, trying to attract digital nomads to their destinations. But at the same time, as it was mentioned several times during this event, the impacts of digital nomads are not so straightforward, and there might be some costs as well alongside with the benefits. And policymakers don't seem to be seeing that, judging by their response. And also, policymaking has been so far a big gap in academic research focusing on digital nomadism. So I was very interested in that context. Now, how can we study digital nomad visas? There is obviously no one single database where we can check what everyone's doing. And there has been no comprehensive review so far in academic literature. But also, we all know that there is a really great wealth of information available in materials and sources targeted at digital nomads to help them or help us identify those support schemes and so on. So what I'm trying to do is to tap into this this information and kind of systematize the information available about those visa schemes. So this is essentially my search protocol. In short, I first search Google for the term digital nomad visas, as straightforward as it is. And I was looking at articles and blog posts targeted at digital nomads that would list countries that offer those digital nomad schemes. I extracted a list of these countries from multiple sources. I applied some inclusion-exclusion criteria. For example, a lot of these sources also were mentioning visas that were announced but not yet implemented, so I had to exclude those. They were also quite often mentioning visas that could be used by digital nomads, but were not explicitly targeted at them, and I was not interested in that. And then I didn't get the final data from these sources, these blog posts, but rather I used them just to compile a long list of digital nomad visa schemes. And then I went back to the official governmental sources to extract some information to compare those visa schemes. And the data included the launch dates, the authority that was in charge of implementing the program, duration and costs of visas, eligibility criteria, and quite a bit more. So I'm still trying to figure out and go through this data, but I just wanted to show some more straightforward and probably most interesting information I have found out already. So I found 33 digital nomad visas worldwide, and at least 11 that have been announced but not yet implemented. And as you can see, there really is a race. All of those visas have been implemented in the last essentially 2 years. And for me, it seems quite an impressive response to this new phenomenon. So most DNVs have been implemented in the Caribbean and Central America, as well as in Europe, essentially, especially Southern Europe, although, as you can see, some schemes are also emerging elsewhere, like in South America, Western and Eastern Africa, and a couple of examples in Southeast Asia. What struck me right away was that was the overrepresentation of island states, and particularly small island developing states, which was previously also identified in the literature as one of the responses of those particular countries to COVID lockdowns to keep the tourism inflows coming. Right, and I sort of preliminarily identified 3 types of 3 approaches maybe to digital nomad visas. The first one is sort of the basic one with an immigration angle, and it's essentially a change in the immigration law, often passed within a broader immigration law reform. So essentially adding digital nomads as one of the kinds of long-term visitors under existing visa schemes. And these involve quite often a complicated application procedure, including in-person application at the consulate or an embassy, a very few promotional activities, and generally information about these visas are quite hard to find. Secondly, and this is probably the most common type with the tourism approach, and this is very much related to something that Ignacio was talking about in the previous presentation, one of the first presentations. So here we can see the digital nomad visa as a kind of tourism program a bit outside of the normal immigration rules. They tend to be implemented by a tourism ministry or tourism board. They often have simplified application process, which they also advertise. So they are saying, hey, you can apply online and in 5 days you will get the visa. It's easy, go for it. And along with this, there are attempts to sell the program and the destination through slogans, nice pictures and videos of digital nomads enjoying their lifestyle on hammocks and sunny beaches, etc. And also they often involve some complementary services, so they can advertise accommodation services or some local tourist attractions, etc. And what was quite surprising for me was that they often explicitly signal that if you that you can go there and you will not have to pay any local taxes. You can pay the tax in your country of residence, which is a bit counterintuitive in my view, as you're essentially giving up on one of the potential benefits of having digital nomad presence over the longer time. Yes, thank you, Olga. And finally, I find this complementarity approach to digital nomad visas when these schemes are, they can share some of the features of either the immigration approach or the tourism approach, but they have this one distinctive feature of being implemented alongside another existing policy. So maybe best if I give an example here. In Estonia, the digital nomad visa has been implemented alongside the e-residency program in an attempt to kind of market Estonia as this destination for digital entrepreneurs. So e-residency offers this online digital presence, while digital nomad visa offers a more physical presence in Estonia. Yes, some of those programs appear to be a bit random, and I'm referring to those immigration, to this immigration approach. So the governments don't really don't seem to know what the point is, and they just implement those visas because why not? But some others seem to be really well thought and well targeted at accelerating existing policies, be it tourism or other entrepreneurship, tax, or other policy priorities. So just to finish with a couple of points and ideas for other avenues for research. At some point, we definitely should try to evaluate the effectiveness of these digital nomad visa schemes. There is very little information available about even the basic data, like how many digital nomad visas have been granted, etc. So it's very tricky to judge the effectiveness of those visas. And again, coming back to this point that was raised a few times, we really have to get some ideas about what impacts digital nomads have, because the governments, a lot of governments seem to think that there is only positive behind this, but as we can see, there are definitely some costs related to big digital nomad communities. So that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. A very interesting overview of digital nomad visa policies, and indeed something that has been booming during the last 2 years. And I'm also interested in this topic. And for me, the biggest question is how the digital nomad visa actually creates a definition who can be defined a nomad. It depends how much do you earn, whether you get a salary or you can prove that you have an income, and all these criteria that you have to meet to be qualified as a digital nomad. So for me, it's an interesting perspective how state policies construct or reconstruct someone as a digital nomad. So please, questions or comments? So I see the discussion going on in chat, which is wonderful. So any other questions, comments? Vasily, please.
Hi, Jan. Thanks for your presentation. It was really interesting, like an angle. Did you make kind of research? What is the intention of the governments? Because the digital nomads visa, as you have demonstrated, the number of countries that compete already for the consumers or for the, I don't know, for social, or maybe they try to attract professional workforce to the countries. I know that in Portugal, where I'm located now, that they are willing to give jobs to digital nomads, having a scarce resource of the people, professional. What is your view in terms of government policies? What is the intentions? Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a great question. So it's not part of my research currently, because I'm essentially analyzing information available on official government websites, and they usually don't say why they do what they do. That's in terms of bringing in some professionals and entrepreneurs. This is very much the case in some of the examples in the complementarity approach. So, for example, Estonia specifically says that we are looking to attract digital talent, digital entrepreneurs, and Estonia actually allows digital nomad to work with Estonian companies and for Estonian companies, which is usually not the case. So most of the countries explicitly forbid digital nomads from entering the local markets. So this this point of entrepreneurship and networking with local talent is actually kind of explicitly excluded and forbidden almost, with a few exceptions of those countries that explicitly focus on entrepreneurship, such as Estonia or also Malaysia. Malaysia is also an interesting example, as they only accept digital nomads from very specific sectors like IT, digital marketing, and those digital sectors. So in a few instances, there is a very specific focus on networking and entrepreneurship, but in most cases, my guess would be that the governments are simply after the purchasing power of digital nomads, and they are counting on increased local spending.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you. Fabiola, your question. Kaiser, maybe you can type your question in the chat, because we do not have much time. Fabiola?
I will be very quick. Just a comment, Jan, is very exciting to hear about your research, because I've recently also reviewed policies. And I was just wondering, do you gather data also about how many people actually apply on the estimated success of these policies?
I was very much hoping for this data, but I find it very hard to get.
Isn't it too early, because our first visas we see like implemented last year? Are these numbers available even, or
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
so
that's another great point. Yes, visas that have been implemented a few months ago, we simply won't have any data on those, any good data that we could analyze. But hopefully in the future, this will be something that can be looked at. I really do hope so.
this is very interesting indeed. And you have one more comment in the chat. Please pay attention to that, Jan. And Kaisu will put her question here in the chat as well. So we have to move on. And our next speaker, Franz, will be taking us to Portugal and talk about the coffee shops as a specific infrastructure for digital nomads. Please, Franz, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Let me just share my screen. Can you see it? Okay, thank you so much. Thanks everyone, and especially to Olga and Scott for organizing this. It's been very inspiring to hear to the previous talks. And I'm here to talk a little bit about Lisbon and about the specialty coffee shops that have popped up in the city in the past few years. And this is actually part of a collective project called Smart Est. It's a EU-funded project. You can check the website to know more about the project and the composition of our team here. But if you're wondering about this image that I chose for the cover of my presentation, it's actually a response from a local Portuguese artist and designer to the announcement by the Portuguese government a couple of months ago that they would create a digital nomad visa, which they did. It's been implemented for 1 month now, and I think it is a very ironic statement. It's supposed to be a sticker to welcome digital nomads in the city. But to go back to the project, I don't have much time to explain to go into detail the process of field work, but just to say that we've done many interviews and a commercial census in a particular neighborhood in Lisbon. We did ethnographic work and virtual ethnography as well. And through the virtual ethnography, I've literally collected hundreds of comments like the ones that I'm showing you now from digital nomads and remote workers that have already settled in Lisbon or are looking to come to Lisbon, asking for coffee places to work from. So coffee is really an ubiquitous a presence in these discussions. And some people refer to nice coffee shops or great local cafes or even the hipster coffee shops to work from. And of course, these populations, they're not looking for these kinds of coffee shops, which are the traditional old style Portuguese coffee shops. But they are, as you probably know, looking for that kind of coffee shop. There is a particular aesthetic to that. You're probably familiar with these kinds of coffee shops in your own city, which serve single origin coffee prepared by professionally trained baristas, and where coffee is extracted in various kinds of techniques. But these kinds of coffee shops are new in Lisbon, but they are not new globally. And in other countries, this is an image from Denver, Colorado, in the US. Coffee shops have been usually understood in terms of in urban studies literature as signaling wider processes of urban gentrification. And indeed, in core capitalist countries with the modern service economies, these coffee shops usually translate new consumption patterns by local middle classes. So in these contexts, so from Copenhagen to Oslo to Melbourne to New York, this is pretty much a domestic market thing. While in Lisbon, what I want to argue here, one of the things I want to argue here is that there is a strong, fundamental transnational component to the emergence of these coffee shops. So just to give you an idea, in 2015, there were only 2 specialty coffee shops in Lisbon. And 5 years later, there were 63 of them. And of course, in this 5-year period, Lisbon witnessed its tourism boom. But also what I want to argue here is that tourism does not fully explain the emergence of this particular kind of business. So I brought here a short quote from Sergio, who's a Portuguese and coffee shop owner, and where he says that 95% of the people who come to his coffee shop are foreigners, if not more. Some are tourists, but most are expats. And he said that he doesn't like this term, but it's the people who work for foreign companies and earn way better than Portuguese residents. And indeed, these coffee shops have created all kinds of products tailored to digital nomads and remote workers. For instance, this coffee shop offers the possibility of paying paying a €5 fee and drinking as much coffee as you want to drink throughout the day, not to mention the avocado toast. These coffee shops are not only spaces for drinking coffee or for individual work, but they also perform other functions. So in this case, this is a meetup event organized at a specialty coffee shop here in the city. But also this one, it's another coffee shop where they have, after the regular working hours, they organize a yoga dinner club where people do a yoga session and then kind of help prepare their own dinner with the support of a chef. And it's an event that is totally advertised to digital nomads and remote workers and expats. So, and to speak about other functions that these coffee shops perform for people who have mobile lifestyles. This is a coffee shop that participates in a network called Key Nest. So Airbnb hosts can leave their keys there, and then the coffee shop employees would deliver the Airbnb keys to their guests. And I decided to bring another quote from another coffee shop owner who says that his clients are people who travel. And I think his definition is very interesting because it somehow reshuffles the distinctions between tourists and locals, or the divide between foreigners versus Portuguese nationals, because it brings, thanks Olga, it brings a mobility element to it. So those who travel, those who have the means to travel, and the specific habitus in a Bourdieusian sense, that guides them towards specific forms of consumption when abroad, but also when at home. So these spaces function as spaces of privileged sociability that brings together not only the digital nomads and expats and remote workers, but also cosmopolitan middle classes and local hipsters. So just to conclude, we found particularly illuminating in the project to think about coffee shops as mobility infrastructures, or to use John Arry's terminology, as moorings. And mobility, as we've been discussing today, is always embedded in and resonates through infrastructures. In this case, co-working spaces, short-term rentals, but also coffee shops. And these places work in a way that they promote a savoir-faire of mobility. So being able to order and to understand this particular vocabulary of coffee facilitates community building and mutual recognition. And I think that the lifestyle mobilities literature has already shown us how in these particular lifestyles there is a blurring of the work and leisure divide, and the production and consumption divide. But there is also another blurring that takes place, which is the friendship business divide. And I think this is interesting because these coffee shops also provide the basis for the creation of friendships that are also strategic in the sense of the gig economy, of the knowledge economy, of the creative economy, because these new friends, these new acquaintances are pretty much potential partners and potential clients for freelance workers who are those the digital nomads that we've been talking about. That's, I think there's way more to talk about, and I think about Lisbon is one of the few cases where there's a very recognizable backlash, like a reaction against digital nomads, which is something very new. We can talk about this later, but I would end my presentation here. Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting how coffee shops are becoming the part of all the let's say digital nomadic infrastructures, and driving people to these places. Questions, comments, please, from the audience. Again, lots of postings and discussion in chat. Anyone? I don't see any hands raised. I mean, it was very, thorough presentation, so I guess everybody is satisfied. Okay, Scott, please.
It was just a comment I was just about to write, Franz. I might as well say it. It was a very interesting presentation, and I really found that a novel point at the end there about the blurring of the friendship business divide.
Thank you, Scott. Vasil has a question, but Franz, please comment if you.
No, I just wanted to say that it's something that I think it's not typical of Lisbon. Of course, it's something that happens not only in coffee shops and also, but I think it's more surprising that it happens in coffee shops than in co-working spaces, right?
Hi, Franz.
Hi.
As I understood, you have been making observations on the coffee shops, like physically, right?
Yeah.
Did you measure somehow, like in terms of the time that people spend there? What is the day pattern that they have? Is it more like working routines that they come, let's say, in the morning or whatever, and then they spend most of the working hours there? Is it the meetup place where they just join and come for the events? What is the maybe some division in terms of shares for the daily pattern that they have in the coffee shops?
Well, thanks for your question. Actually, things have changed very rapidly here. So in the beginning, people could work at coffee shops for as much as they wanted, but now the city, these infrastructures, especially specialty coffee shops, are somehow saturated by the incredible amount of people who are working from these places. So there are many of those coffee shops that used to welcome digital nomads and remote workers, which are now creating limitations. So you cannot work with your laptop from like around lunchtime or at specific times, or there is a minimum consumption fee that you have to, or sometimes they just bring to the table like a piece of paper where it's written like, please, if you want to stay longer, you have to give the waiter or the waitress bigger tips, or to order more stuff because it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable for businesses. So in less than 1 year, we have seen all these changes taking place because of the huge numbers of remote workers.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, 30 seconds. We have to move on quickly. Your question, and there are also questions in chat. So Franz, please pay attention.
It's okay. I'll just connect directly. I just thought that exploring, you know, the minimalist digital nomad international aesthetic was just something that really resonated, and I'd love to talk about a bit more.
Yeah.
Great.
So connecting Lisbon and Chiang Mai.
Mai.
Okay, perfect. So
Thank you.
we are moving to our next speaker, Kimberly Marr, and she is currently in Brazil doing her fieldwork. So Kimberly, please.
Hi, can everyone hear me and see my screen?
Just put the presentation mode, that would be more convenient. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, yeah, of course. So yeah, thank you for inviting me. It's been an early morning here in Sao Paulo. It's been really great to see everyone's research in the field, especially to put some faces to many of the names I've been reading about in my literature review, to getting to know the topic. So my name is Kim. I'm a PhD candidate at Modular University in Vienna. But as Olga mentioned, I'm at my first location, actually, doing my fieldwork for this research. So that being said, it's at a very, very early stage. So I really appreciate feedback or comments or questions as I go through as I haven't analyzed my data or collected much of it at this point. So I'm also happy to see that loneliness and these kind of challenges have already been brought up, and also the commodification of communities, since this is kind of the area that I'm looking at. So I'm going to look at it through the lens of social support and social networks of digital nomads who are practicing a mobility lifestyle. And why I think digital nomads are a really fantastic population to look at this from a network perspective is that their role in between, as many people have also mentioned, the blurred lines between tourism, being a local, migrating, and often hypermobile, although I know there's quite a diverse trajectory that digital nomads partake in. They have developed, in my observations, like rapid adaptation and adjustment strategies, as well as companies selling communities through co-work, through co-live, through different kinds of programs. I'll focus on how the mobility disrupts what we understand as a traditional social network, and how they've developed strategies to develop networks on the go. So being both connected to their home networks, digitally to other people around the world that they've met along the way, as well as much needed face-to-face connections in the location that they're in. So it's been quite well established, the need for social networks for digital nomads especially. So this might come from gaining information, maybe like locally or through online forums, about the local life, the facilities in the destinations where they are or where they may be going, to avoid isolation, and especially as where work is digital, it adds an extra element to this kind of isolation where more face-to-face contact is needed for many people. And interestingly, the appeal of finding a kind of like-minded community between digital nomads. So my main focus will be on exploring how digital nomads fulfill these social needs or social functions within their network. And through looking at this in a mixed methods approach, which I'll get into, I want to look at some elements such as how rooted or grounded nomads networks are in the destination that they're in, and how dispersed it is between home, between other geographical locations compared to where they actually are, how the connections are made in the destination, and what these impacts have of different kind of measures of their social network structure on their perception their own well-being and kind of the sustainability of the lifestyle for them. As it's also been mentioned, it's like this lack of social network has been kind of a sticking point for settling down, so to say, or not continuing the lifestyle. And I would like to sample, at this point, I'm focusing highly on a kind of hybrid hostel co-work area, but also reaching out to digital nomads in the case study areas, as well to get some kind of contrast or comparison between different strategies. So if people are using these facilities or traveling independently, alone, with a partner, and so on, and see how the networks are developed differently. So just briefly to touch on social network analysis, in case any of you aren't familiar, it's generally the study of social structures, but looking through like quantitative networks and graph theory. Typically, or like a large portion of the area focuses on whole or complete networks. So maybe within a company or politically. And another side of this, which is growing currently, is egocentric networks. So this is what I'm going to focus on, which we also call a personal ego network, where the ego would be the kind of digital nomad that's in the center, and then look at all of their connections to ties. And these can be, in my research, will be social, so primarily people, but can also be organizations, groups, or different kinds of non-human stakeholders. So we can measure through looking at a network like this, differences in size, density, like we can ask questions about the frequency of contact or the strength of contact, depending on different research questions, diversity of their networks, and so on. And I'll be focusing on the social support lens. So this is like a concept within social capital, based on the measures and concepts of social support within health and the field of psychology. So I'm looking at 4 basic types of support. So emotional, which I think is quite clear, having someone to lean on, to have fun with, to relax with. Instrumental, so this would be more concrete help or providing services or assistance. Informational support, which would be maybe help finding resources or advice in the location, as well as in their work digitally. And appraisal support, which is more of a self-evaluation, also somewhat linked to informational, but through affirmation or criticism in adapting to a new place. So the data collection is, as I said, a mixed methods approach. So I'll use the measures and structures of social network analysis through a guided face-to-face interview. So I would like to eventually digitalize this to expand my sample. But basically, as you can see in the diagram here, I sit down, we together ask name generating questions. So I'll ask who are significant people in their network, focusing on taking a snapshot of their current network. So we acknowledge that social networks are dynamic, they're ever changing, but we want to look at them as they are while the person is practicing digital nomadism. So we have in the first circle contacts that are in the location. In the outer circle, their contacts in their kind of home base, which could be split into different areas. And then outside, maybe people they work with digitally that are elsewhere, or other travelers that they've met that are not in either location. And then this follows name interpreting questions. So to ask about their ties, the relationships between ties, and then we kind of use this as a visual aid to build context during an in-depth interview. So just briefly, how I plan to kind of mix the structural part of the social network with the reflections of the qualitative interview to answer the questions. And these are, as I said, I'm still just starting to collect data. So obviously I don't have an analysis to provide yet, but this is kind of an idea of what an egocentric network could provide and some inspiration. For example, the one on the right was based on a migration research looking at like diversity of networks and embeddedness in a local community. So this is kind of the goal at the end to help visualize the analysis. Yeah, so thank you. As I said, I appreciate any questions, comments.
Thank you, Kim. It was really interesting, and as a geographer, I like maps, and I was thinking about drawing these maps for quite some time. So I'm finally happy to see that somebody's actually doing this. So I'm really looking forward to see more and to read your results. So are there any questions, comments to Kim's presentation? I don't see any hands, but I mean, it was a very thorough. Okay, Dave, please.
Yeah, I just wondered if it was too early to ask. One of the terms I used very early on in my research was hub and spoke work practices. So people tended to be working with clients or people in what digital nomads hate to call their home country, I started to kind of like draw the amount of lateral connections that they had within the same space, and I never really got very far with it, but I just kind of use that as a kind of as a general insight. And I just kind of like wonder if you've got anything to say about the lateral connections and how those are formed.
So do you mean between between the network members, or? Yeah, I mean anything in the actual physical space. So I mean it could be with other nomads, it could be with staff of co-working spaces, it could be with locals. So one of the more interesting components of this, I think, is asking them how they met or how they made connections within the destination. I don't ask those questions about the ties that are home or digital, but within the destination, that's like a main part of the research as well, to find where what brokers or connectors are. So so far, I mean, I've only done a few preliminary interviews here, but there are quite a few connected through, for example, like a co-working supervisor or through other digital nomads, because I also ask, to the best of their knowledge, if any of their, going through each connection, if they're connected to other people in their network as well. So far, I've seen that a lot of patterns of digital nomads who meet each other along the way, introduce each other to their friends. So I think as a point of future research, it would be very interesting to actually connect all the egocentric networks and see a kind of broad picture of a digital nomad whole network.
Wonderful, thank you.
Fascinating, thank you very much. And please post in chat any comments, questions, and if there are no other questions, we will move to our last but not least presentation, from Brazil to China. And Cohen and Hongguan Xu gonna present their research on use of digital technology. So please. Yes, we can see the slides.
Okay, so just a minute. I will use the...
Yes, that's the button. Perfect.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about another kind of lifestyle mobility very different from the young one, mobile for work. This group of peoples are retired peoples, and their mobility is not for work, but for their health. So it's a very different story. But what we see that is the digital also play a critical role to enable them to carry out these activities. And we know that seasonal retired mobilities has been always regarded as a type of lifestyle mobilities. Usually it started in Europe, but now it's spread out. And in China, we also see that a rising trend of retired mobilities moving mainly from the north to the south. And one distinguished characteristic is the move is for the health sake and for the well-being. And this is very different from Chinese culture, when the senior peoples would like to aging in place rather than aging in another different place, or they go aging to get a positive aging through the keep on moving like birders. So we have been looking at these issues for past 7 or 10 years, and we have been examining how they are connecting with the home and how they are connecting with the locals. And then one of the very critical things we found is that with the trend of the rising retired mobilities is also their use of the digital technology, mainly is the smartphone. And whenever we discuss with them, we found they are using the digital smartphone to connect with everything. So recently we began to really look at these issues about how digital technology enable and what's the role of the technology, digital technology in their well-being thinking. In fact, theoretically, people are examining how these tourists get well-being or health experience from their places or mobilities. So there are various theoretical threads. And from Gessler, he said that people can get therapeutic experience from the places. But then Connor says, oh, it's not the intrinsic of the characteristic of these places which enable the people to get a well-being, but it's the relational therapeutic landscape. And then it means you have to build the relationship. And Gessler said that when people are moving in the mobility, they keep on building relationship with the surroundings and such get their well-being. And so from this theoretical thread, we will see that how the digital, this machine can enable people to get the relationship with the other components to get their health experience. So, so using the ANT, we are trying to see how, as I said, the digital smartphone play a critical role to link all these components to enable this well-being. So the places is Sanya where we have been looking at, and most of these lifestyle mobilities are from the north, and especially during the winter time, they move to the south. But as I said, traditionally, they are really home attached. They don't want to move. But with this digital possibilities, they stay there and keep on moving every year. So what we see that is this, is that this smartphone, enable them to connect many things to get, I don't know why. So I just use this, sorry. So we will see that by using the smartphone, in fact, they get various motivators and drivers. Definitely, they can get this to search for the information, but most importantly, they can connect to their family members from the hometown. And especially during the COVID, they can get to their doctors, not from the destinations, but from their hometown, their doctors who are familiar to them. And also another important is this technology also enable them to get connected with the people from the same province, which we call Laoxiang, so they feel relaxed. And another thing is very important is this technology enable them to go to, motivate them to go to this outdoor to get exercises. So their life is centered or organized by this technology, and makes them feel safe and reliable and happy. Everything is from this, although they are in another town. So what we see is that this smartphone, basic, is a function, is an information search. But important is with this ring, they can go to this outdoor. They are connected through this app to see who has gone so many steps, and they compete. So enable, drive them to do some exercises to get access to the seaside. This is the GPS, we are recording them. And another is this social connections. They are connecting within this, connecting with the hometown. Whenever they feel that they are not comfortable, they're not going to the locals. They go to their daughters and the grandchildren, so they feel enough support, emotional support. And then they also need to find Laoxiang whom came from the same town or same province. So using the smartphone, they connected to each other. They talk their own dialect, and they organize the trips in the same place. So they feel that they are in their own home. And also the smartphone enable them to find opportunities to participate in some local communities, to really feel like serious leisure, and also local associations. So what we found is more and more people in China from the north are coming to the south, and with the help of this smartphone, maybe we criticize about how the smartphone, the technology control them, but actually, yes, it is function as an agency to organize this senior people's life. But on the other hand, this enable them to physically move from their hometown to these destinations to have another home or better linked with the local. So we will see that the smartphone, in fact, are not really used by the seniors. They are functioning as enabler, reminder, driver, and entertainer. They provided and they organize all this seniors people's life and make them connect with the environment and other resources which enable them to feel health and feel well-being. And definitely, in our research, we also found that they are different of using the smartphones, because different smartphones will have a different app and different capacities. So different peoples will have different resources to get good or bad or not so good smartphones. So their connections and their use and the stability of the smartphone are different. So they can the capacity for them to associate with all the other resources are very different depending on the capacity of the smartphone and the capacity of using them. But overall, that with this techno smartphone and its app, we feel that more people are getting mobilized in China, especially with the Chinese culture, that they are linking with their own hometown, their own familiar doctors and their Laoxiang, and they want to compete to show their possibility for aging through this ring and smartphone. So that's our talk. Thanks, and comments are welcome.
Thank you. Very interesting and very well connected, I think, to the previous presentation in terms of, upholding different networks and using smartphone to do that. And indeed, digital technology has produced a lot of different mobilities, different activities, and it's very interesting to see how is it resonating in the Chinese context. So thank you very much for this presentation. Any questions or comments from other participants? Yeah, I see Scott, please.
Thanks, Honggang, for the interesting presentation. I was just going to comment that it was really nice to see the focus on materialities here via the smartphone. And earlier in the comments, Nathan was commenting that it would be great to see ANT brought to bear on these topics. So we got it in the end. So it was nice to see ANT brought in.
Yeah, we have a question from Soo-hee Choi, please.
Yeah, greetings from South Korea. Very interestingly, first of all, actually, thank you very much for your presentation. I am quite much familiar with your publications. I actually teach mobilities paradigm, and at that time, whenever I just talk about the snowbirds in the Chinese context, I actually talk about your publication. Interestingly, last week, when I was attending a PR conference in Korea, there was one Chinese student who was presenting the prevalence of using TikTok as one of the forms for the media for entertainment. And while we are having a discussion, actually I was told that it is a younger people's entertainment tool rather than older people. And there could be other ways, other media, other apps for entertainment than TikTok. So I'm just simply wondering why you brought TikTok, which is a short form, video content, social networking site.
Yeah, initially it was mainly used by the young people, but recently more and more senior people are using TikTok because it's very easy. It just shows. So they use this TikTok to video themselves, their dancing or whatever, and send very, very easy. So I think that is the main reason for more and more senior people began to use the TikTok. First, they spend a lot of time watching this TikTok because it's really like a grassroots people's life. So it's very interesting. It's only like 3 or 4 minutes. So now many senior people also can video this. So they began to video their dancing or this, it spread out. Of course, with this young people's, young people have more, how to say, the innovative ways to do this TikTok. They are very interesting, and they put a lot of how to say, it's like a dramatic scenes. It's like a play. So they design this TikTok. For the senior peoples, they don't have so much capacity to design to like a drama, or but they can video it. So whatever they see, they will just put it and package into a TikTok. So that is also entertainment for themselves.
Thank you. Interesting. I can comment that there are quite a number of senior TikTok influencers in Chinese TikTok. So it's also trending to become an influencer for older people as well. So thank you very much, everyone, and I would like to ask presenters to stay till the end. And just to conclude, and please, if you have any questions, still post them in chat or connect to our presenters through emails or other forms of ways of contact. And just to conclude, I want to say that the curated collection on lifestyle mobilities that is launched by the Annals of Tourism Research has inspired Scott and me to bring together researchers on lifestyle mobilities and to pinpoint the research themes and research needs. So we hope that the topics that we heard today will become papers and will be submitted to the curated collection. And please, I would like to note that the submissions are open not just to those presenters who we heard today, but to anyone. And submissions are open from today until foreseeable future. So when making submission, just indicate that you would like to be your paper to be a part of the curated collection, and indicate that in the cover letter that would accompany your submission. And just to remind you that the curated collection is a compilation of publications on the topic of lifestyle mobilities that have clear relevance for tourism. So, another important point that I would like to mention, and that was raised by Scott in the very beginning of our event, that we hope to keep up a global academic network on lifestyle mobilities and digital nomadism. So we would like to hear from you some ideas for the 3 remaining minutes that you may share on how to keep up this academic network, or maybe some other thoughts or ideas you have on today's event. There have been a couple of comments already that, yeah, people would love to join, and please tell us how we can be a part, or how can we contribute to this network. So do you have any suggestions or any other comments on how to continue this wonderful wonderful collaboration? A list would be awesome. Okay, we can start from the list. Kaisa, please.
Yes, I actually just created a group on LinkedIn. If you're a LinkedIn user, just earlier this week. It's a bit lonely still there because it's been active for all of 2 days. But I just posted the link into the chat, so come and join. Like, it doesn't have any purpose as of yet. All of these discussions can be continued there. And also what I got out of today is fascinating how much research there is out there that is of course not published yet, because all of us can do our literature research, but most of us haven't got to the point of publishing yet. So we can talk about all the research that people are doing while it's not being published yet. So please have a look in the link. Also connect with LinkedIn with me. I like to use it. So yeah, it's an open forum for everyone to come and discuss whatever you want. It's gonna form into whatever it is in the future. If anyone's also interested in getting a managerial role or admin role for the group, just drop me a line and I'll add you. I don't want to take complete ownership of it. So
thank you. Okay, there are some initiatives already, and Mattia, please share your thoughts on this.
Yeah, maybe a simple idea to do this kind of event again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we will think about
it. An annual event or something like that. Yeah, would be probably something nice to do.
Yeah, it really helps to bring up the research, as Kaisa mentioned, that is not yet published. So just to know what people are doing, yeah, it definitely helps. So if there are no other comments, suggestions, and questions, we are perfectly in time. And I, again, would like to ask all the speakers to stay. So I pause the recording.